is how sections of the mainstream media in America are covering Saturday's fight. I don't know if it's their way of minimizing the success of other territories at boxing. This is a huge event. 65,000 people turned up. So this is USA Today Sports. The journalist, his name is Josh Peter. He said Anthony Joshua is a choke artist because he lost to Alexander USYK. He also said, who is Alexander USYK, you ask, in an exaggerated manner. Like, who is he? Like, he didn't know who he was. Like, his audience doesn't know who he was, and maybe they don't. But if that's the case, who does that reflect badly on? USYK, Joshua, or the USA Sports TV audience and the journalists? Josh Peter is supposed to be covering boxing. He hasn't mentioned that these are 2 Olympic gold medalists. He hasn't mentioned that Joshua was a unified champion twice. He hasn't mentioned that USYK is a gold medalist and an undisputed cruiserweight champion. Hasn't mentioned any of that. Everything is irrelevant to him. Joshua is irrelevant to him. USYK's victory is irrelevant to him. The fight is irrelevant to him. The resumes, skill sets, everything irrelevant. And look, America is home of the shock jocks, so you've got to look beyond it sometimes and not take it too personal. So when he says, who is Alexander USYK, if you're asking, he describes him as a cruiserweight who's fought at heavyweight 3 times. These are his accomplishments. You know, no boxing knowledge at all, doesn't know that USYK fought heavyweights as an amateur and in the WSB. How about that he won his first world title in 10 fights? Nothing at all. And you can feel his arrogance that he's not interested in learning about these fighters who are not from America. He has no interest in learning about them and educating anyone who follows USA Today Sports. And because boxing has been marginalized in America a little in comparison to American football, basketball, etc., he probably thinks, yeah, I can just poke fun at these foreigners and nobody's going to pick up that he's a jackass. But there's a lot of American boxing fans who read that, and I saw them on Twitter, and they weren't impressed with his lack of boxing knowledge. They weren't impressed at all. It was embarrassing to some of them because he's representing their country. Then he said a lot of stuff that, to be honest, a lot of the PBC fan base was saying as well. And it was out of ignorance. He was saying, oh, the Brits just love their boxers, so they just follow Joshua blindly, not knowing that he's not any good. Paraphrasing. This is what he was saying. You know, listen, Josh, outside of Anthony Joshua, there are no British fighters doing over 1 million pay-per-view buys in any one fight. There are none. There are no British boxers who can fill out 90,000 capacity stadiums or 60-odd thousand. There are none. So all this, you know, we just randomly follow any boxer over here is a load of crap. You're not doing your research. You don't want to do your research. You rather make up what you want to say rather than find out from credible people. You don't even have to ask someone who's British. You could ask just a knowledgeable American boxing fan and they could tell you anything what I'm saying here is equally well as I'm saying it. But he's not interested in that. He wants to put out a narrative. These are some of the responses from Michael Montero, Rick Glazer, 91 Second Massacre, Adam Abramowitz, Honey Addict, Dare Walsh, and Christopher Reeves, who says, this is why the sport is in its current state in the USA. USA Today is still heavily consumed by a lot of people. And this is what the average Joe sees and says. Glad I didn't waste my time, money. That reporter clearly doesn't follow the sport. And this is what I'm saying. Maybe he actually does know the sport, but he's realized covering the sport and being the bearer of knowledge doesn't pay. But being a shock jock gets you all types of attention, doesn't it? Looking at it, you could argue it's troll article. But he's a mainstream journalist, that's the problem. You know, USYK cleaned out his division at cruiser in the WBSS tournament, something he's not informing his audience about. And we saw what happened to that tournament because America really didn't give that tournament the respect it deserved. We would have way more undisputed champions if America had participated in that tournament. But they didn't. Bob Arum and Al Heyman, they just dismissed it and blew it off. You know, there's journalists like this over there. If Eddie Hearn saw that article, or if he's seen it, it probably pissed him off. Because Eddie had lofty dreams, or has lofty dreams, of conquering America. him and Anthony Joshua went over to Madison Square Garden, took a beating, and from that day there, Joshua's reputation in America, you know, it's just gone down the pan. In all truth, though, why was he going over there? He was just coming off a big pay-per-view fight at Wembley Stadium with Alexander Povetkin in front of 60,000 fans. 60,000. You see them Eastern European fighters playing their trade in America. We can start from the likes of Kovalev, Golovkin, any ones you can think of. Lomachenko. Do you think they'd be in America if they were getting that same money in the Ukraine or Kazakhstan or Russia? No. You know why? They're not as influenced by American boxing politics and American culture in general as the British are. They don't care. They'd stay where they are. The Eastern Europeans don't care about fighting at the MSG because Joe Louis and Ali and Frazier did. They don't care about that. They want to get paid. You know, Tank Davis, he wasn't impressed with USYK's victory. That's fair enough, Tank, but USYK went back home to a hero's welcome. They made this configuration with lightsabers, it looked like, as he was walking through the airport, giving him flowers. You know, when Povetkin beat Dillian Whyte, and what was that for? An interim title? It wasn't for no world title. He had this big traditional ceremony. The Russian Boxing Federation turned up. They were dancing, showing him mad respect. And this is a man who's got doping violations, 2 of them. So if this is what mainstream America is going to do, you could do that. But the Ukrainians ain't giving you a second look. They don't care. Their fighters are heroes. Vitaly Klitschko became mayor of Kiev. What American boxers did that? What British boxers did that? Now all of a sudden, the so-called AJ fanboy, as some of you idiots are saying in the comment section, is having to defend Alexander Usyk for the sake of real boxing. This man has fought all his world title fights on the road, not one fight in Ukraine. He asked for the rematch against Joshua to be in Kiev. But Eddie Hearn's going to shut that down and say, obviously, there's no money there. He's going to want it back in London. But I can't blame him for wanting that. Tell you what, man, if they beat AJ in that rematch, Bob Arum is talking about he wants AJ to step aside. Do you think it's going to be easy negotiating with Kroshak? You thought Eddie was difficult to negotiate with? If they've got all 3 scraps, do you know what you're going to be dealing with? You're going to have to pay him a truckload of money to fight in America. What, and he's got all 3 belts and Tyson Fury's got 1? What do you think you're going to be able to say? Well, Tyson is the star. They're not going to be saying 50-50 like AJ did. I've got 3 belts, you've got 1. These guys ain't joking. They haven't come to joke, bruh. Khrushchev played it to the letter. He said, you want us to fight Joe Joyce? We're taking 90% of the split based on our purses, our last 3 purses and Joyce's purses. 90% and killed off the fight. They weren't going to give Joe 30%. No, 90. We take 90 and that was that. Hardcore. And if you try all that ducking shit, that might have made AJ a little insecure and Eddie Hearn. They're just going to look at you stoically and sternly and say, good day, gentlemen. Why would Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua step aside for Tyson Fury to do anything when Tyson Fury has blew off so many fights? Bob just wanted to get his face in the topic of AJ losing and Usyk winning. That's all it is. You're fighting Wilder 3 times, and in between that fighting Tom Schwartz and Otto Wallin. Look at the second Wilder fight. He was made mandatory. The WBC skipped over poor Dillian, who was waiting for over how much, hundreds or thousand days, made Tyson mandatory. Why did you have to sign another rematch clause for a 3rd fight? And now you want people to step aside. It's ridiculous. Yeah, AJ steps aside and Tyson probably messes Usyk about again and doesn't take the fight. By all accounts, there was an opportunity where they could have terminated any contractual obligation they had to that 3rd fight with Wilder, and they didn't take it. Now you want people to step aside? It's a joke. It's a joke, Bob. You see, I've got to measure out how I approach this video because you got to take the bad with the good. On one hand, I was bigging up Simon Jordan because his straight talking was exactly what Mauricio Sulaiman needed after the arbitration destroyed the heavyweight title fight for Undisputed. And then now I'm listening to Simon Jordan talk again. I'm like, I wish this guy would shut the hell up. Like the way he was talking to Chris Eubank, the way he was talking to Derek Chisora a few months ago, just out of order. Bang out of order. I think it was just shortly before Chisora fought Joseph Parker. Yeah, but Derek, every time you stepped up, you've lost. You've lost. I'm thinking, this guy's a pay-per-view drawer in his country. He held up Frank Warren's business single-handedly at Box Nation for a few years, despite his losses. And who the hell are you to be talking to him like that? You can't talk to the guy in the ring like that, man. It's not on. And Derek didn't like it, but he brushed it off. And he was speaking to EUBANK Jr. saying, yeah, the 2 times you've stepped up, you've lost. And Jr. was a little critical of the advice that Rob McCracken was giving to AJ on Saturday. And Jordan was talking to him like he was a school teacher. Who are you to undermine someone who's established in the game and how he's running his corner? And he was talking about the 2 times he stepped up and he's failed. I'm thinking, I just don't like the tone of it. But then again, I was bigging him up when he was taking the fight to Mauricio Sullivan. So you can't have it both ways. He's good for some occasion and others not. It was a good thing Ade was there. Ade from DAZN. He works for TALKSPORT as well. And, you know, he's establishing himself as one of the top pundits now. Has to be said. Whether he's talking about football or boxing, Ade is holding it down. Big him up. And he had to kind of keep Simon in line with EUBANK, and he done a good job. Simon tried to say he hasn't fought anybody, but, you know, Ade brought up James DeGale. And Simon tried to say, he's past his best. He said, nonetheless, James DeGale is a good name. And then he attacked EUBANK for attacking Saunders after he lost to Canelo and taunting him about quitting. Then Ade had to pull up Simon and said, well, Billy done the same thing to EUBANK after he lost to Groves. And Ade done a great job. He done a great job in keeping Simon in line. It was entertaining, though.
That's not a world title fight, Chris.
But it's a big fight.
Sure, but
Chris did say world title fight or big fight, okay. Simon. It's a big fight. It sells out the O2 Arena.
Okay.
It does
yes,
that. Yeah.
I did say that. And Saunders has been very vocal about wanting to fight me for a £5 million.
I'm not surprised, Chris. You ridiculed him.
Price.
You ridiculed him. I wasn't over impressed. I think fighters do say things, and I understand there's rivalry, but you went straight for him after the Canelo Alvarez fight, and you took the mickey out of him against about someone that got hurt in a fight. And I'm sure if the roles were reversed, you wouldn't have been over impressed with that.
Simon, Billy Joe's done exactly the same thing to Chris. When George Groves beat Chris Eubank Jr., Billy Joe was on it as well. Okay. They both go back and forth. They're both the same people, if I'm honest with you. That's why the dislike's there, and that's why I think it's a big fight. Chris, look, good luck.
Shelly Finkel shuts down undisputed showdown for near-term future. Now, Joshua has activated his rematch clause, or he's expressed a desire to do so. And Shelly Finkel is saying he has no plans of entertaining an undisputed title bout with the winner anytime soon for his client, Deontay Wilder. And he's saying no because Wilder has unfinished business with the third fight with Fury, and he said he doesn't want to get ahead of himself. I believe Shelly's handled this wrong. He should have said, it's too early to say. We've got to beat Fury. We've got to see what AJ and USYK do. Perhaps it's the way that Boxing Scene have phrased the title of the article, Wilder Manager Shuts Down Undisputed Showdown for Near-Term Future. Because it's just going to get a lot of fans saying, look, Wilder's ducking again. And a lot of people are just thinking, we're just never going to get the undisputed fight. Let's not forget, it's down to Shelly, Team Wilder, Bob Arum, Team Fury, why we don't have an undisputed fight to look forward to right now. It's just not something fans want to hear right now, is it? The new unified champ, however, USYK and his manager, Khrushchev, are saying, they want to beat up AJ for the second time, and they want the unification match with Fury or Wilder. I tell you what, man, Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos, that fight has a receding hairline that's getting pushed back to the back of its neck right now. So, now, basically, it looks like Triller may default because Kambosos is saying the amendments that Lopez have signed, saying the bout is going to be at the Barclays Center, he hasn't signed, but they've told Lopez that Kambosos has signed, and Kambosos has agreed to fight at the Hulu Center, which is formerly the Felt Forum, part of the MSG, but not the main MSG, which is another fail for the fight that they can't hold it at the MSG. And Kambosos' attorney isn't happy with the situation that they're pushing the fight back till the 16th. It's supposed to be on October the 4th, Kambosos is ready to fight, even though he's just had a newborn child and his grandfather's died. But they're pushing it back to the 16th. And Eddie Hearn is set to jump in if Triller are forced to default. Eddie made a bid of $3.5 million. Triller made a bid of $6,018,000. And Top Rank, TO's promoter, came in with the lowest bid of $2,315,000. So if Eddie is paying out the purses, Lopez's purse will shrink down from $3.9 million to $2.2 million. Kambosos' purse will shrink from 2.1 to 1.2. However, Triller would forfeit its 1.2 million deposit to the IBF in that scenario, with 780,000 going to Lopez and 420 to Kambosos. Lopez and Kambosos could seek to recoup more money in a lawsuit against Triller in that scenario. Triller already cancelled its reservation with Madison Square Garden and forfeited a $100,000 deposit. Ryan Kavanagh from Triller is saying this is nothing more than Kambosos attempted to extort Triller. This is what he told ESPN. Kambosos is demanding $380,000 to sign the amendment to move the bout to the 16th. Looks like Kambosos is a little frustrated with the whole thing. Strange fight. That hairline just continually getting pushed back and pushed back. So will it end up on the zone? They're saying another possibility is it ends up on a card with Devin Haney, who is likely to fight before the end of the year. We're talking maybe November if it ends up on MATCHROOM. So Sky Sports are ushering in the new lineup with MATCHROOM gone to the zone. Chris Eubank is leading the charge. Now, his opponent, Anatoly Muratov, the German fighter, got fair technique, but his opposition, the last guy he fought was 7-9-0, the other one 12-16-0, the other one 43-13-1. Now you can't just gauge from statistical numbers on the records how good the fighters are. Beat someone who was 15-1-0. But, you know, no one has came out and vouched for his resume that he's fought tough opposition. So this guy here, probably a light touch for Eubank. Muratov in his last 3 or 4 has been fighting 6 and 8 rounders. I mean, I don't know why that would be. Eubank missed out the whole of 2020. Came back last year on a MATCHROOM card promoted on Sky against Marcus Morrison. That went the full 10. He spent the whole of 2020 with Roy Jones. Some people believe that they didn't see any difference in his performance against Marcus Morrison. There are a few things he did well. Morrison, you know, he was a prospect at one time, but after a couple of points defeats, his limitations are evident. But what people don't realize, just because someone is not going to be the next Marvin Hagler or Bernard Hopkins, that don't mean you can just blow them away. Marcus Morrison is like a 5'11" unit. He's just full of muscle. He's very strong. So Eubank not knocking him out is not the worst thing, like some people are saying. Morrison is fit, strong, if not much else. Now, with Chris headlining the card, Sky will be looking for him to do an impressive job, preferably inside the distance. And that's what should happen. David Avanesian, he's on the card. Somehow he hasn't fought since the Josh Kelly fight in February, for whatever reason. Carl Greaves will tell you it's because a lot of 147 pounders are dodging him, and I can see there being a case for that. David takes on Liam Taylor, who is 23-1-1 with 11 stoppages. He's from Lancashire in the UK. I don't know much about him. He's got a technical draw with Chris Jenkins, former British champion. Split decision over Tyrone Nurse. Avanesian, the Russian, took Josh Kelly apart. Josh Kelly, he's now a Sky fighter. He's left MATCHROOM since that crushing defeat. I'll assume that Avanesian will take care of Liam Taylor. They've got Richard Riakporhe. He's also left MATCHROOM to go Sky. He takes on Krzysztof Twardowski from Poland. He was 9-2-0. Richard is a big puncher, physically imposing, but his technique and gas tank are a little suspect. He was managed by Dillian White, but they split, and he split with MATCHROOM as well. Well, I don't think he had a contract with MATCHROOM, but he fought on MATCHROOM cards. Richard is a big puncher, 11-0, 8 stoppages. Once again, we'll assume he will roll over this guy here. I don't know much about him. They have Ebony Jones. She'll take on Beck Connolly, who was crushed by Ebony Bridges on a DAZN card not too long back. Some women's boxing there. Haven't seen Joe Pigford in a long time since he defeated a prospect over here. Was it Aaron Morgan? Joe is 17-0 with 16 stoppages. And for the first time since beating Aaron Morgan, who was 12-0, he's fighting somebody with a winning record. His last 4 have been all against fighters with losing records. And they've got Mikel Lawal, a Nigerian cruiser. He takes on Stephen Ward. I think his inclusion is through the Boxer promotions, Double X, who are also promoting cards on Sky. Didn't he win one of their tournaments or something? So he's got himself a slot on the card. 13-0, 7 stoppages. Up against Stephen Ward, who's 13-1 with 4 stoppages. Lawal might have too much firepower for him. Richard Bolotniks, he got Stephen Ward out there and won. We saw Bolotniks get destroyed after giving Joshua Buatsi a tough fight. So there's a lot of Matchroom. I'm not going to say rejects. I'm just going to say hand-me-downs. Almost looks like a Matchroom card in some ways. Matchroom will be looking for all of them to shine because, you know, none of them seem to be taking on any serious opposition here. EUBANK especially headlining the card. He wants to put on a nice, destructive performance and get his name amongst the Golovkins and whoever else they're going to target. I don't think he's too keen on Demetrius Andrade. Every time his name comes up, and I know it's cross promotions with DAZN and Wasserman and Sky and stuff like that, but I don't think they want to go that route. It wouldn't be a good fight for EUBANK, I wouldn't have thought. An aging Golovkin could suit his style better, but even that's a tough ask for EUBANK. But he needs to get through this one on Saturday. I'm not getting caught up in this Canelo Caleb Plant tribalism. Somehow it's turned into a black versus Mexican thing and Caleb's Caucasian. So I'm not looking to get caught in all of that. Besides, it seems more of a thing between the fans of either side rather than Canelo and Plant, who are making it a tribal thing. You know, Caleb has said a lot about the Reynoso gym, accusing a lot of the boxers of being cheats, including Canelo. Canelo looks to be trying to take any opportunity to have beef with Caleb, saying that he aimed the mother effer comment at Canelo's mum, which he didn't, obviously. And recently, both of them have said they're confident of victory, so we go from there. It's undisputed, that's all I know, that's what I'm looking forward to. Can Caleb up his game? You see, it's not just going to be about Caleb boxing on the back foot. If Canelo lands hard to the head and body, how Caleb copes with that will set the tone for how the rest of the fight is going to play out. You know, the tribalism can skewer commentary because there's people who are saying that Caleb is just going to outbox Canelo. And these are people who want Caleb to win, and that's fair enough. But no, look, if you're going to beat Canelo, unless you're Erizlandi Lara, able to land them single shots and remain very elusive, he can do that, you know, that Cuban southpaw stance, and he's very accurate. But Caleb is going to have to show some dog, kind of like USYK did against AJ. We're going to have to see you fight inside. You're going to have to be a complete fighter to get a W out of this one. That's my opinion. And that's when a lot of these guys run into trouble with Canelo, when they've got to implement offense.